A warm welcome to all of you. Herzlich willkommen. Bienvenue à toutes et à tous. We are delighted that you are here with us for this afternoon staatskantine session with Abe Greenspoon from the Canadian Federal Public Service. Abe is the real deal. He's a really impressive change maker, which is why I've been looking forward to this session for a long time. Because what he and his colleagues have built with the Free Agents program is really impressive, really interesting, and I think we can learn a lot from that. The basic question is this: government organizations are asked to respond to increasingly complex problems and challenges, and to do that effectively, government and public service needs an agile, flexible workforce and an agile, flexible way of working. But how do you do that in an environment that's frankly known for hierarchy and rigidity? And the Free Agents program is one rather compelling answer to that question, and we'll be hearing all about that from Abe in just a minute. My name's Danny Berkeley. I'm a co-founder and co-director of Staatslabor. We're a Swiss government innovation lab, and we want to change the way the public sector in Switzerland thinks, acts, and feels, and we do that in two ways. First, by bringing together pioneers and change makers in government, just like yourselves, all of you, just like today. And secondly, we also do that by working directly with government entities on innovation projects. And if this sounds like something you might be interested in, do come talk to me or any of my colleagues, because I'm not here alone. I'm here with some of my wonderful colleagues and friends from our team, my co-director Alenka Ona, Christa Schlechten, Samira Keller, Jana Walder, Medea Fuchs, and others. You can see them waving right now. You can recognize some of them by the very dramatic wintry background that they've got. So here to share his experience with building the Canadian Free Agents program is Abe Greenspoon. Abe's a community builder in Canada's Federal Public Service. He's currently helping build a new change management function at IRCC, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, a role that he started in October 2020, so relatively recently. Prior to joining IRCC, Abe designed, built and implemented the Free Agents program, which is, as you'll hear, an innovative, really exciting new workforce model that promotes autonomy and mobility for public servants. Abe's worked in various roles in the public service over the past 12 years, and he's also held numerous leadership positions in public sector communities. And Abe says that he values leading with empathy, curiosity, humility, and compassion. These are excellent North Stars to be following for our sessions here. And you will also likely find that these values are reflected in how the Free Agents program is designed and run. And then finally, I should also mention that we have two other Canadians with us today from the Free Agents community, Pamela James and Ryan Benson. A warm welcome to you as well. And then very finally, I should mention that, of course, because this is Canada, Abe is bilingual. So if you'd rather ask a question in French, you were very welcome to do so. Abe, thank you so much for being here. We're really happy that this worked out. Over to you.
So much, Danny. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the warm welcome and the introduction. Happy to be here. I'm really happy to open this conversation about the program, Canada's Free Agents. I'm a little bit rusty at presentations, I feel like, these days, so forgive me if technical difficulties or related things. I also kind of stole a presentation that is an overview. I have a hard time figuring out what information should be presented. So I really wanted this to be a quick introduction. There's so much out there that I wrote about the program on the internet. If you just Google Canada's Free Agents, there's so much to read. There's a podcast that I did with someone talking about the future of work. There's a lot of content out there. So if there's anything missing from this conversation today, I'd really encourage you to look out there in the interwebs and see what's available to you, but I'll try to touch on some of, I think, the main components of the program about how it works. So I feel like we're all on the same page in terms of the technical details, and then try to also get into some of the ideas that we had and maybe even the challenges that we faced along the way, give you a bit of an overview. But happy to obviously make this a conversational topic and for us to spend a lot of time on questions and conversation and discussion. So I'll start sharing my screen and I'll just do basically a PowerPoint presentation. And then this will be the primer. So I started working on this project back in 2016. So it's been, or even 2015, I should say. It's been over 5 years now since I worked, we started this program. And it was really a passion project for me. It was really something that really sparked my interest from the first day that I heard about it. And just feel really fortunate that I was able to work on it, because it really, I think it highlighted a lot of my core values and the things that I was interested in as a human, as a person, as a public servant, having been in the public service for, at that point, about 6 years, and really wanting to help the way that public servants experience work inside the civil service in Canada, a lot of challenges that we faced, and really wanting to help with the inner sort of workings of our civil service. So I felt really fortunate to even have the time to work on this at all, and to spend 4 years on it was a real blessing. What we sort of say is we sort of start by talking about the HR system, and we start talking about the opportunity for innovation in HR as being sort of a big key for this. A lot of the policies and practices that we saw, and I think continue to see in the public service, just weren't meeting the needs and aren't meeting the needs of the individuals. The HR experience in the public service, I would say, is not centered around the experience of public servants. The HR system, I'd say, is centered around things more related to compliance, oversight, regulation, and making sure that we follow the rules. We have mostly regulatory type of structure and system in our civil service that's meant to really prevent, I would say, difficulties, big issues from happening. And from that position, a lot of the work that's done in HR in our public service, from my perspective, is meant to prevent the bad things from happening more than enabling good things to happen. And that becomes a big challenge. I think we're moving in a better direction these days. I think things are starting to shift. I have lots of thoughts on bureaucracy and organizational design. Our classification system is a big challenge. So there's a lot of detail I could go into here, but suffice it to say, at a high level, there are some big challenges in everything from how we pay people, how we classify positions, how we describe the work that we do, how we hire people. A lot of it is around the idea of fairness, of transparency, of making sure that we're focused on how we serve Canadians. And a lot of it, I think, is actually preventing us from achieving some of those objectives that we have. So this was an effort to try to orient things much more towards the needs of public servants. In particular, the two areas of individuals and managers, to try to give them more control, more autonomy, more ability to make decisions that were good for them. And so really the idea was just to create this system and see what would happen, and to run it kind of as a pilot. The vision, the idea came from a 2012 report by Deloitte, the consulting firm, from work that they had done in Washington, D.C. in the United States. And they came up with this idea of something called GovCloud. And they were trying to imagine a government HR system that resembled cloud computing, something like cloud computing. And with cloud computing, you would think about having your resources available in the cloud and accessible to you on any device from anywhere. They wanted to take that concept and apply it to human resources. It actually, unsurprisingly, resembles the consulting model quite a bit. The idea being that people would be available for temporary contracts, temporary assignments, postings, and that there would be a centralized location where all of these kind of gig economy workers would live inside the public service, and then would be available to go and complete projects. And you'd have managers managing different areas of work, and you might create multidisciplinary teams from the pool of available public servants to go out and complete these projects. So we liked that idea. One of my colleagues, the woman who I actually ended up working with to design the program, wanted to try to create this type of model inside the public service, thinking about, again, less about maybe the idea of people as consultants, more about the idea of people as gig workers, as having the freedom of the gig economy, but also then combining the gig economy freedom with the stability of the civil service in terms of the indeterminate status or the permanent status. And so being able to choose your work as a gig worker and find projects that you were really interested in and taking those on in shorter terms, but also then knowing you had the stability of a permanent position inside the public service. And this was part of a bigger vision for the gig economy movement inside the civil service and how it would come about. And we ended up splitting them off in two different directions. One became free agents, and the other one became something called Talent Cloud. And if you Google Talent Cloud, you'll come to a website, talent.canada.ca, and you'll see that what they've done is they've built out a completely different model that is also equally interesting. And this is my colleague Lauren Hunter, who's built this temporary worker pool of people who are only employed temporarily in the public service. So what it actually has created is a bit of an interesting in and out opportunity for people from the outside of the public service to do temporary work for the public service a little bit more easily. It is meant as a way to sort of augment the indeterminate or permanent workforce. That sort of free agents being a little bit different, where you have indeterminate employees who are available inside the civil service to work in different places. Talent Cloud is temporary public servants, what we call term public servants, who are available to do work inside the public service. So just a bit of background on that sort of division, and that split was part of an idea of a whole of government approach to thinking about our resource management, our temporary resources, and people inside the system, all around the idea of being, human-centered, obviously, focusing on the needs of the individuals. And so for free agents, there's sort of really three main areas of focus. And we got here, I would say, over the 4 years. This wasn't instantaneous. Actually, in the beginning, we were working from within an innovation hub. The government of Canada in the early 2010s really started getting interested in innovation hubs inside organizations. And so a lot of organizations stood up these teams to focus on building innovation capacity and building innovation capacity inside their organizations. And there's a community of innovators in the public service that sort of still exists to this day. So we were really focusing a lot in the beginning on innovation skills and attributes. But over time, I think what we started to realize that the real value was for the public service was to give people these three elements: autonomy, mobility, and talent management. Autonomy meaning the opportunity to choose the places where they work, to be in control of the decisions that they make about what jobs they take inside the public service. Mobility as in a tool or a mechanism to be able to allow people to do that. So the structure that we put around the program to enable that opportunity. And then talent management, actually having dedicated people who we called talent managers available to support them in their career development. So actually trying to center their experience around growth and development and opportunities to progress in their career and to take on new roles, to give them advice, to provide coaching support and things like that. So this is sort of the vision, and these were sort of the three pillars of that. So this happened. We created this program over a series of a number of years. In 2016, the idea really was to start with one department, which was Natural Resources Canada, our Department of Natural Resources, where we gradually, in cohorts of 10, through 3 intakes, onboarded 30 free agents. And then we gradually grew it over the coming years to a second, third, and fourth department, which is, I believe, just onboarding today and starting to hire free agents. So this was sort of our gradual progression. Was that the idea from the beginning was always to bring people into this program 10 at a time and gradually grow it in different departments. And we call those departments home departments. So home departments basically are these departments like Natural Resources Canada, Department of Transport, and our Treasury Board Secretariat, which were the first 3. When I was there, we now have a 4th department, our Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Department, which actually hire the free agents through this deployment mechanism to become indeterminate public servants within their organization. Now, they're already in the public service somewhere in an organization, and they're moved to a location within these home departments where they are made available for anyone anywhere in the public service to hire them. So these home organizations are the organizations that pay the free agents their salaries and cost recover the salaries of the free agents when they go on assignments from the organizations where they go and do their work. The home organizations are also responsible for the talent management. This is where the talent manager exists, the sort of hierarchical manager for the free agents. And I always like to say the talent manager is there to basically serve the free agents, never say no to the things that the free agents want. I mean, I know the free agents would probably argue that definitely wasn't the case, but it was certainly the idea that they were essentially just there to enable the free agents to do what they wanted to do. As much as we could reasonably allow them to, obviously. So the talent manager is an enablement role, and it's meant to basically do, for the most part, the administrative portion of it, which is to make sure that the agreements are in place, to make sure that the financial cost recovery element is in place, to make sure that the salaries are getting paid, to make sure that everything is happening. So they're the kind of the core administrators for each of the home departments. And then we have on the other side, the host departments, the departments who hire free agents. They're the ones who pay the home departments for the salaries of the free agents. They actually support the performance reviews. They give evaluations of the free agent's performance to the talent manager, who then kind of organizes that all within the home department. I think these numbers are a little bit out of date, but they're probably not that far off. But just to give you a sense, we have about 100 or so, roughly, let's say, organizations in the federal Canadian public service. And over the course of, say, 4 or 5 years, literally completed hundreds of projects across dozens of those organizations, the free agents going out and doing projects all across the public service. So it's gotten a pretty broad traction across different organizations in the public service. And I think on the hiring manager side, this was one of the real benefits. And I think it was one of maybe the keys to making this program successful, was that this was a quick and convenient staffing solution for hiring managers. The demand for free agents, as far as I can tell, has always outpaced the supply of free agents. The demand for people to come and do work has always been higher. And so that has been something that has been a boon and also a challenge, because managers have this idea that, oh, I can hire a free agent and I'll just get them to come and work on my project. But the truth is, what you're actually doing is you're putting in a proposal to the program for free agents to come and do your work. And if they like it and if they're interested in it, they might come and join you. And what ends up happening is the free agents will actually end up doing the interview, and they'll be the ones going out interviewing hiring managers, asking them if they're the right place for them to go and do their work. So this convenient, quick staffing solution actually, really interestingly, I think, turned the paradigm or the dynamic of hiring on its head in a little bit, because here you had these skilled, capable, available people to go and do work on your projects, but essentially they were telling you, you better create the right environment for me or you don't stand a chance in hiring a free agent. And so free agents started really, I think, pushing, and I think this was an interesting, I mean, I'd be hard pressed to give you data on it at this point, to be honest with you, but I think there's data out there that can really show that that by orienting ourselves in this kind of way, we move the needle a little bit on what managers might be offering to public servants in terms of some of the benefits of working for them and their teams. Another thing we started to really push was Canada is a big country. We're really large. We have public servants working from coast to coast, and really started to try to push the idea of remote work. Before it was, maybe we were like the hipsters of remote work before it was cool. So it was like back, I think in 2016, 17, it was kind of unheard of. It was definitely much less heard of than it is today, that managers in Ottawa, in the nation's capital, would be hiring people to work on projects, especially some of the core projects like policy work or I don't know, let's say even IT work. That remote work was not nearly as prevalent as it is today. So that was, I think, something we were also trying to push, was to look at talent across the country. And so if you wanted to hire a free agent, you'd also have to consider the free agents outside of the nation's capital and offer them opportunities to work remotely. And so managers admitted that in our surveys with them, that free agents led to positive change, and that they would hire free agents again. So it was very positively received by the hiring managers. Free agents obviously felt that they really appreciated having control over their career. That was something that came up a lot that they talked about. And so, we got really good feedback about the program from both sides. I think the key players were the managers really understanding the opportunity of hiring a free agent and the ease and convenience of it, and free agents knowing the opportunity to take control of their career. The recruitment process in and of itself is a really interesting case study. It really, I can't take credit for it. It came out of the brain of my colleague Lauren Hunter, who's the woman I mentioned, who was the manager who hired me, who became the leader of the Talent Cloud program that split off. And her idea was that our public service competitions generally dehumanize people. They generally discourage creativity and innovation in the hiring process. They generally, I think in the goal, which I think is a good one, to standardize and make transparent and make fair the hiring process, actually go so far as to, I think, remove some of the human elements from the hiring process. And so our idea was to try to see if we could figure out a way to maintain that idea of fairness and transparency and equity in the hiring process, but also try to give people opportunities to demonstrate their humanity, demonstrate things outside of just maybe what we would call traditional public service attributes or skills or experiences. And so we started off looking at innovation attributes. This eventually started to transition as we asked free agents what they felt like were the key attributes for them to be able to do their work really well as free agents, and eventually turned into a set of 14 attributes. Things like, probably unsurprisingly, Danny mentioned in the beginning, empathy, curiosity, humility are actually things we hire for and try to assess in the recruitment process. And I think that goes a long way to supporting free agents, to make sure that they have some of those attributes in doing their work. Because I'll take humility as an example. I think in the early days, we really thought we could push innovation skills from the program out into organizations. And I think what we learned is that an individual going to work in an organization really is up against a big challenge sometimes as one person trying to actually push, let's say, an innovation agenda. And I think, in retrospect, that maybe seems obvious, but I think what we had to realize was that having humility in those cases is actually the better attribute than trying to think that you can be a innovation superhero putting on a cape and changing the public service culture. So, so we've learned that some of those attributes are the attributes that are really helpful for, let's call it innovation work or culture change work, or some of the work that we want to do on making the public service more human-centered. So we do things like, I can talk about the individual elements of the recruitment process. We do things like get people to play games. We've introduced games in the hiring process. We've introduced scenarios where people work together as teams. We've actually done improvisation, so theatrical improvisation kind of techniques to sort of observe certain attributes in people, and all of these different elements were all meant to be opportunities for people to demonstrate these attributes. And so we've tried a bunch of different types of techniques and types of approaches to give people the opportunity to show us in real time that they possess these attributes. And so we invite people to come and actually work in groups for a large portion of it. We have an individual interview process. We have an individual reference process, but the group process was really the interesting one that was very unique in that it gave people opportunities to come and, maybe awkwardly, maybe strangely, go through a scenario or play a game or actually perform to an audience of people that are looking for the attributes and trying to assess the attributes. So, I'd say the feedback was very, very positive about this, that people really appreciated the opportunity to demonstrate their attributes in this kind of way, rather than this traditional kind of standard, tell me about a time when you demonstrated humility in your job, which would be the traditional kind of public service way of doing it. So the evidence is narrative based. And so we were trying to figure out, is there a way we can actually let you creatively show us how you possess these attributes? And so the mix of different ways of getting those attributes was always something we played around with. And the recruitment process was, like I said, always really well received, and I think people found very interesting. It was a real challenge at times to make sure that we were still maintaining the integrity of the process. I think there were times when we missed on that, but I think we learned a lot from it and gradually tried to figure out ways that we could, standardize it and bring rigor to it as well. And I think it's possible. I think it's still a missed opportunity in our public service that we don't figure out ways to humanize the recruitment process and the hiring process, because it's still, for the most part, is very standardized and very structured. And I think it definitely has a preference for a certain type of person, and generally not related to creativity. One of the interesting things that came out of the program that we weren't really sure in the beginning would necessarily happen was the community element of it. As it's grown and existed in different departments, the community has definitely been an interesting part, where people have come together across the different parts of the program to build a community virtually, through regular check-ins, through community gatherings. And that has been actually a real benefit for the program, I think. And I think it's been a really core and central element that we never necessarily planned for, was to have people support each other in the way that they do inside of the community, to have people who could reach out to other free agents at any time and make sure they were connected and find opportunities to bring people together. Before the pandemic, in person, now obviously only virtually, and across the whole country. And that's been, I think, a really great support mechanism for people, has been the community element. And I think that that's been a central part of the success. So I've given a lot there. I think I'll stop and just say thank you for the opportunity, and that I'd love to hear any reactions or let Danny ask a couple of questions and see where this goes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Abe. I mean, two questions to kick us off. The one is, it seems almost too good to be true. What's the catch? And secondly, how on God's green earth did you get this approved?
Yeah, too good to be true. I'm giving you a very biased perspective on it. If you asked a lot of different people about the program and some of its shortcomings, there are many. And so, you know, I like to present the ideas and the successes, but I know that there are equally a number of real challenges with the program. You know, we have a lot of bureaucratic structures across the organizations that really make a lot of the elements that we've tried to put in place real challenge. The structure of our organizations and how siloed they are, how different they are, how separate they are. The Canadian civil service is really a patchwork of a bunch of organizations that have been stuck to each other. Someone once described that to me as the way the civil service formed was a core civil service with a few organizations and a bunch of other organizations stuck to them. And the different organizations don't talk to each other always particularly well. And the way that things happen inside different organizations really varies. And so the different cultures, the different structures, the different practices create this real challenge with an interdepartmental program, as I'm sure you can appreciate in your civil service. I can't imagine it's much different in other countries. The difficulty of collaboration or you know, co-creation or even sharing mandates across organizations is a real challenge. At the political level, we've started to try to. I'm seeing governments start to talk more about horizontal accountability, which is a really hard thing for sure, even at the political level. But what that translates to at the bureaucratic level for us is, yeah, a lot of real challenges and even just the practicality of moving people around. And so the different perspectives, the different processes, the different systems grind a lot of it to a halt. You know, as quickly as we can do certain things, we can get a person into a position to do work. In the background, the system doesn't actually move that quickly. And so as much as that's happening where a person is going there, there's a lot of stuff happening in the background that really pulls the system back. And I think in a lot of ways to the detriment of the free agent. So that's something to note, that that's happening in the background, that we're moving, or the program has been moving at a pace that I think the bureaucracy is not necessarily accommodating of. And I think on purpose, you know, I would say there's a lot of reasons why that's the case. And I think important reasons. And I don't think we have the intentions to tear down that really good bureaucratic structure that really actually is in place for good reason. But we're trying to push it to maybe to pull it forward a little bit in some ways. So I could go on about all the challenges that happen because of that. A lot of them are technical details about the real challenges that happen in the background. And I'll be honest with you, when I left the program, I knew for sure that some of those things were going to be real challenges for the future and that they needed to be resolved and that we would need to figure out a way to fit us as a square peg into a round hole of the bureaucracy. And I think that still is a real challenge. I think like one enabling factor for our success, how we got it off the ground, was a few elements. We looked at this a little bit at some point along the way to see like what was in place at the beginning that really allowed this to happen. And I like to credit it a little bit. I think it was my colleague Helen Daniels, who was one of our talent managers, who articulated this first, and she came up with this idea of the three people that were in place at the beginning as being key components of how we managed to launch this. One, I always point to our champion, the person who was an assistant deputy minister, which is like a vice president inside. That's the terms we use. Deputy minister as the head of our organization, and then assistant deputy minister, vice president role. He was our biggest champion. He was there to essentially, you know, push aside the barriers, to pull us along, to encourage us to take the risks. Ultimately, these were big risks we were asking people to take on, you know, literally millions of dollars in salary as a liability, essentially, in an organization that wasn't benefiting from that liability. So they were paying the salaries of these individuals who were going and working in other places. Now, we were cost recovering it, which was our risk management approach, but that took a lot of courage, I think, to be able to say, we're going to take this risk notionally that these people will be able to find opportunities, they'll be able to do the work, and we'll be able to cost recover it. So we were reducing the risk on the organization. All kinds of ideas about what would happen if the government started cutting jobs. Would they cut free agents? Where would the free agents go? If they lost their jobs, what would happen? Someone had to take that risk, and I think our champion played that role. And having him in place was critical. He, at every step of the way, made sure that this program was moving forward. Lauren, my colleague, who I've mentioned a couple of times, was, I think, the real visionary behind this, who came up with the idea, who had this thought about how we could do it, who set the standard, who set the structure from the beginning, who had the vision. And like really, I think, set the direction for the program. And I think her imprint, her impact on the culture that the program has to this day, I think, is still there. I think she was the one that sort of made that that decision about what this would look like for the future. And then I guess I'm the third part of that, is that, you know, someone needed to be there as like kind of the muscle to like push all this through, right? To like, as exhausting as it was to be there at every meeting, at every conversation, at every time someone would come and question the work that was being done, to be able to respond to those questions, to build it, you know, tirelessly. Like, it was exhausting, working against the inertia of the bureaucracy. And I guess I found myself in a situation at that time when I had that energy. I'm not sure I could do it again right now. In fact, even the thought of trying to do something like that again is exhausting, just thinking about it. But I had the energy to do that, and it took, I think, a lot of energy. And so having those three key elements in place was I think, a good recipe for success.
Really grateful that you took the time to be with us today. What I'm taking with me are many things. One is just the sheer boldness of what you did, which is impressive and inspiring. The other piece is the importance of these design choices that you've made. You emphasized the importance of the fact that people can choose their own projects, that they're not assigned to projects. The free agents actually has a lot of meaning, and that seems to be a really important part of what makes this so special. And I'm grateful that we got to hear from you, because it expands the space of the imaginable, at least for me, and therefore also the space of the possible. To everyone who joined today, thank you so much for joining and participating on this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great evening and take care.